Hi, welcome to the second series of my 4 seasons in print set of short videos. In these videos, I'll be looking at 5 images from each of the seasons, and I'll be looking at the paper that I've decided to use to print those images on. Paper is a critical thing in photography. Whether we use a matte paper, gloss paper, satin paper, textured, heavily textured or smooth paper can really affect the way that a finished image looks and is presented to the viewer. I've also used the Canon Pro 300 A3 Plus pigment ink printer. Everything you see in this little series has been made on the Canon Pro 300. It is a printer that I've got to know reasonably well. I do go around the country with it, talking to clubs and societies and at the odd convention. It's a cracking little printer, it's portable, and it handles the Canson Infinity range of fine art papers with ease. There are some groundbreaking new papers from Canson Infinity. There are some pure white papers with no optical brighteners, and that includes matte and smooth. So, you might learn something in this video that could really give you something different now to move forward with your own photography. So let's get on with this week's video. Hi, and welcome to this episode of the Series 2 4 Seasons in Print videos. This is winter, and this concludes Series 2. So I've tried to choose 5 images here that show winter in all its shapes and forms. The key thing about winter that I've always found is the low light. The sun doesn't get very high, so we can get some cool, crisp light. The air's cold, it's crisp, it's clear. None of that hazy light we get in summer. And things like trees normally bare their souls, so we see the landscape looking slightly different. So I've tried to pick 5 images that are different. Now this one's a little bit weird because it doesn't look like winter. I had to look at this a few times and check the date when I took it, because we've got some leaves on these trees, so I don't know what kind of trees they are. So by calling it winter, it could have been very early December or very late November. But it's obvious, I think it is a November-December picture. But this is a typical lakeland scene. This is from St John's in the Vale in the lakes. And I would have gone there to shoot one of the tarns that's up there, but I was drawn by this scene in this particular light. Sometimes, when I started off doing my photography, I was drawn to wide vistas, I was drawn to sunrises, sunsets and whatever. And it takes a while to become comfortable with shooting in the middle of the day. So this is a sort of early afternoon shot. Bear in mind it gets dark probably about 4:30. So this is probably about 1:30. But we've got some fantastic light in this. This is a view across St John's in the Vale. So we go over this initial foreground, which is typical of the area where we've got these rocks and these grasses. And then we go over a little brow and we fall into this valley. This is the start of the Helvellyn range in the background, I believe. And then we've got this lovely row of white cloud here and a little bit of black cloud, taking you out of the picture. So it's got a nice active sky, and it's just a nice image showing a lakeland scene. It's a good representation of St John's in the Vale. The image itself got a lot of detail going on here with the foreground before we start to go with the crissy-crossy sort of centre of the image, and then we leave, as I say, with that sky. So it's got a nice range of tones. I could have printed this on 3 papers, really. The shiny ones would have been Platine because it's got a lot of mid-tones. It's also got some contrast, so it would have been great on the Prestige too. But I've gone for a smooth paper again here. This is another one where I'm using the Arch 88. You'll have heard Arch 88 mentioned a few times on this series of videos. And I think that's because it's an exceptional paper. The fact that we now have a pure white that we can work with without worrying about deterioration of colour as the years go on, because remember, this has no optical brightness and it's pure white. It's a paper I'm using more and more, to be honest. I love it, and I love the amount of detail it shows and the amount of depth of sort of black that it can portray. So pictures like this, it maintains that contrast, that crispness, and it just produces images that are full of life. The printer, again, fantastic job. Massive amount of detail in these areas at the front with the rocks and the lichen that's on there and the grasses. And the print is just a pleasure to behold. So it's a really nice, typical shot of the lakes in early winter, we'll call it. And it's printed on a nice, smooth matte paper. So that's image 1. in the winter episode. This is image 2 in the winter episode. This is a picture called Silverlight Castel Sant'Angelo in Rome. This won a silver medal in last year's Paris Photography Prize. So it's one of those rare occasions where I get a medal for something. Doesn't happen very often. But this is a lovely picture. This was one of the first pictures I made on one of my first trips to Rome. So this is shot early afternoon. The dark you can see up here is basically a blue sky, and I've found a really nice way of converting blue sky to give me these dark areas. I think it's a technique they used to use in film. Basically, it just involves changing the level of the blues once you've converted to black and white, which sounds a bit weird. But it's a lovely picture. It's got some fantastic repetition going on. We've got these arches that come down on the bridge, and they're represented, they're sort of echoed in the water with those arch shapes here, where we've got the shadow and the light. We've got a classic leading line, the bridge itself, which is in shadow, taking you to the highlight, maybe, of the picture, which is the Hadrian's Mausoleum there at the top, which is lit. So it's a really, really dynamic composition. It's one of my best compositions, I think, that I've made in recent times. It's nice when we find things as landscape photographers, when the elements in front of us work and we can find an angle to make everything just come together to make a really, really nice picture. And I think this is it. As far as paper goes, it is very dramatic. It is monochrome, and we've not got jet blacks in this. We've got some quite dark blacks, dark greys up here and down here. There's kind of a natural vignette to this picture. But I've gone for the Barita Prestige 2. I wanted this to have a traditional darkroom look and feel. It's the heavy 340 gram. Remember, this is pure white, no brightness. And the Canon Pro 300, so we're on the photo black again, remember, has done a fantastic job. It's got a beautiful range of tones. It's handled the detail again in these sections here where we've got excessive detail showing. It's handled that with ease. And yet it's handled the range of tones really well also. So we're printing here on really heavy fine art gallery quality paper with a very affordable A3 Plus printer from Canon. Can't really speak highly enough of it. This is shiny. The last one was a matte paper. No changing over of inks, remember. Just put the paper in the rear feed, tell it what paper it is, use the ICC profile, and away you go. And this is what kind of the results that come out. So a lovely picture. And that's the second picture in the winter episode. This is the third image in this episode, and this is a lovely crisp shot from Whitby. I go to Whitby quite a lot. It's probably the jewel in the crown as far as the Yorkshire coast goes with regard to photographic opportunities, really. Whether you're walking around shooting handheld or looking for traditional landscapes that you can use maybe your tripod on a bit more, Whitby has everything. And this is a shot I like. Sometimes we struggle with this shot because there's some little trees and bushes that grow up in the foreground, and then magically they'll be cut down, and then a few years later they're back again. So obviously on this occasion, which is a couple of years ago, they've been cut down. The sun's falling down behind me. It's just going behind the rooftops of the hotels behind where I'm standing. So you can see we start to get some shadow thrown in here. But the rest of it is just what I like about winter light. You can look at this. There's a quality to this light. It's got beautiful intensity on the foreground and in the middle. It's got a softness because the sun's not very high. So we look at these areas here of, where the sand is and some of the cliff edge. And it's just a lovely light to work with. These colours here are sort of repeated in the centre element. And again, it's one of those images that I shoot where probably I'm going to give you some layers to look at. So we've got the foreground layer, which is these rooftops of the cottages. And then we've got the midground, and then we've got the sky at the top. And as far as the sky goes, the sky did a fantastic job. It's a nice, interesting sky. We've got some blue going on, got some lovely, brighter clouds. And then we've got this dark area at the top, which is almost acting as a border to the picture itself. So it's a nice shot. It's one of those shots where we look across something. So I'm not kind of leading you in, because if you think about it, there is no leading line in this. However, care has to be taken with when you do anything like this. Think about what you want in your image. And for me, I wanted to show the lifeboat area and this pier and the end of the pier. Didn't want to chop any of that off. So once I'd got my left and right sorted, it was just a case of the top and the bottom falling in, really, and making sure that everything was neat and tidy. So it's a lovely image, but it's a very high contrast image. So although we've got this soft light of winter, because of the conditions on the day, and we've got the sunlight catching some of these elements, we've got quite a punchy, dramatic image. And again, for this one, I've used the Barita Prestige 2, because the D-Max on this paper, again, perfect for contrasty images. The printer's done a fantastic job. Needless to say, these rooftops look fantastic because of the aforementioned red cartridge. But it's just a really, really nice print. And again, you know, this is giving the printer a really good test. So for not a lot of money, you're going to be able to buy something that's going to let you produce the kind of work that professionals produce. So can't speak highly enough of the printer. Another great print here that's come out of it, and that's the third image in this episode. Okay, so this is image number 4 in the winter episode. Now this is a popular location up on the Isle of Skye. But every time I've been, I've seen different conditions. And again, I'm a big advocate of going back to places at even different days, let alone different months, because we see different things. 20 minutes before this shot was clear sky. Just before the sun came up, we started to get some clouds. Then the sun came up and we got a lovely shot, sunrise shot, lovely. And then it started to rain coming in from this side, so the rain's going that way. And it started to sort of get in the way and create these lovely hazy, rainy, hazy conditions. And then the shot after this, you're struggling to make out this background because the rain's there. And then it went clear again. So lovely morning. One of those days when conditions change, you're not sure what you're going to get while you're actually there. And you get the chance to make a few pictures that are really, really nice. So this is the Quirang. Obviously this tree is quite popular, but simple composition. Got a little wedge here in the foreground and the eye looks across the tree, and then you're following down sort of the mountain across the lakes to the sun. The rain is adding another element to the picture that wouldn't be there normally. So it's creating this sort of almost like a haze effect. It really is adding some drama to the scene. This heavy little bit of cloud at the top again is acting like a border, giving us a natural finish to the top of the picture and almost pushing the eye to this lit area that's in the middle. So it's a lovely picture and it's very, very subtle. And because it's subtle, I've fallen back to one of the matte papers. But this time, rather than using the smooth Arch 88, I've decided to use the slightly textured BFK Reef Pure White, just to put a little bit of relief in that flat area at the top. This paper has got a texture. It's like a very slight watercolour texture, but it does not detract from the amount of detail that you're going to get down on your print. It just gives it something a little bit different. And again, if this was framed under some True View or art glass, you would be able to pick out the texture on this paper when you stand and admire your frame print. So it's a lovely print, full of detail, high quality detail shown here from the Canon Pro 300 printer. And it's a pleasure to use, as I keep saying, and this is a really nice image, and that's image number 4 in this episode. Okay, we come to the final image of the series, and for this I thought I'd go to one of my favourite locations, Venice. This is an image that was made one evening, so shooting blue hour, Obviously, as it starts to get darker, you start to get the lights come on, which creates all sorts of colours in the picture. There's so much detail in this. Because we've shot when we should have shot, i.e. not too late, we've got this lovely colour palette going on here. It really is beautiful to look at. Lots of detail on the bridge. And then there's this guy. So if you imagine this shot without this thing going on in the bottom, that was made. And then a gondola came from this end, coming across the picture. And I guess this was something like, I don't know, 15, 20-second exposure. And in the 15, 20 seconds, the light on the gondola, well, it's actually the bits of gold on the side of the gondola that have been catching the lights. And as the boat's moving, it's just reflecting. So you end up with this strange kind of shape at the bottom. Some people are going to like this and some people are going to not like this. I like it. I like both of the images, but this one has something unusual, which works really well with this smooth Arch 88 fine art cotton paper, because this probably makes this photograph look a little bit more arty. It's a little bit more abstract. However, we've got all this standard stuff of Venice going on top. So it's an absolutely lovely picture to look at. I love the interest that the gondola has thrown in. And I've gone for the smooth just to sort of go along with that flow of artiness. Because of that, I've done it on some smooth matte. If that wasn't there, I might well have printed this on the Platine fibre rag and gone for a traditional darkroom feel and look. But like I say, because of that, I always find the matte papers push images towards a more arty look and feel, and that's why I've gone with this paper. I think this is another good example of the Canon Pro 300 in use. It's beautiful. The colours are rendered perfectly. There's lots of detail. And again, it's a heavy fine art paper, a heavy matte fine art paper. But this printer seems to be able to produce fantastic results on the whole range of Canson media. So that's the final image that we're going to look at today. I'd like to say in this series, it's been interesting using a particular printer. As I said right at the start, I get asked by the guys at clubs and societies for advice on what they can use that's not going to break the bank, that's going to let them produce really high quality work. It's a printer that I've used as well at some of the sort of, not fairs, conventions that I go to where I represent Canson Infinity. We've got professional photographers at those, and we've actually used the Canon Pro 300 with these papers to show some of the work that some of the other ambassadors from Canson have produced. And it's been a pleasure. Like I say, must have printed over 200 images on it now, and constantly amazed by the output for basically 600 quid. Stick my neck out. The inks aren't expensive. They could be, slightly more capacity. But from a point of view of cost, I think I worked out it's something like this, which is, a big A3 print. You're probably looking at about £2.50 in ink, which really, if you think about how much people spend on travel, kit, meals away, go to Venice, for example, to make the picture, £2.50's worth of ink really isn't going to break the bank if you're going to get results like this. So it's been interesting to use the printer. It's been a pleasure to use the printer. As always, it's been a pleasure to make prints on the Canson Infinity range. One of the papers that I haven't shown you in this series, which I'd just like to mention, it's a paper called Barita Photographique to Matte, which is another groundbreaking product because it's a Barita paper with a pure barium sulfate layer, but it's matte. So it's unusual, and that it doesn't produce results that don't look real. It just produces results that look slightly different to, say, a traditional matte paper would. And I know some of the Canson Infinity ambassadors absolutely love it and adore it and use it religiously. So maybe in the next series, I'll do some prints on that and explain, how you can use it and why maybe you should look at using it. I do have prints in the gallery that have been made on it, but it just so happens they're not in this series. So that's it. I hope you've enjoyed the ramblings about paper and now printers. And I'll probably see you in Series 3 if enough of you watch Series 2. So, till next time, take care.